Okay, I think we are live now.
Hello, everyone. This is Arun Arvind of Mentor Research. We have with us Abhirup Mishra, who's our program lead for the risk management program. Um, I'll let Abhirup take over and introduce himself, and um, he has a set of questions that you will be happy to hear the answers for. Feel free to write in your questions in the chat window in the link that I have sent. So um, go ahead, use the webinar and ask your questions. And towards the end of this session, around the 45-minute point, he will take on the questions that you have asked. Okay, now over to you, Abhirup.
Okay, thank you, Arun. And hello, everyone. My name is Abhirup Mishra. So I graduated from Bitspilani in 2010, and after that, I was working for HSBC till 2016, and then I moved to the US to pursue my master's in quantitative finance. So I used to work in HSBC in risk management. So in this webinar I can talk about the kind of roles that I did and at HSBC and what skills they were looking at. And in the end, I would talk a bit about the master's program because the last time I had a webinar, a lot of people asked these questions about my master's program. Uh, in addition to that, if you have any other questions, you can put that in the group chat. And in case you need it, in case you have more personalized questions, you can always send me an email. So first question probably was what roles are there in banks and risk management? So all I can say is since you're in your undergrad school, so they are looking mostly at analyst level roles. So you're looking at analyst level roles, and you can actually get into multiple areas. One is probably market risk analyst. So you're essentially doing risk analysis, market risk work for a bank. Probably it would be pretty much on the entry level because you would be doing a lot of data analysis, a lot of reporting, but it's just a starting point, and your work will essentially grow up as you actually mature and progress. In addition to market risk analysis, there is credit risk. So that is slightly more in aligned with the analytics kind of jobs. So usually, if you see people who have got into credit risk, they are mostly like if they have some work experience, they are mostly people who have skills in analytics. Uh, However, having said that, you can still get into credit risk analysis in these banks just out of college because I'm pretty sure all these banks have a lot of campus programs. So the only suggestion I can give in case they don't really come to your campus is to try to network with HR a lot on LinkedIn. So you need to bring a link. You have to build a very good LinkedIn profile. Try to see how exactly you can add more skills in your LinkedIn profile because the resumes get shortlisted by a software. Try to put in the school projects that you do. Uh, you can do a lot of projects. So again, you have to do a lot of projects in school. So this probably means doing some statistical projects, some coding projects in school, and just put this, putting a description of those projects on your LinkedIn and your resume. That probably goes a long way in showing that you're really interested in that kind of a role. The second question that I can talk about is what skills are they looking at? So the first, I can say that for doing any job in quantitative finance and risk management is something that we can classify as quantitative finance. Are four skills. The first is understanding of probability and statistics. So you need to have a decent understanding of probability and statistics, basic statistics, to the level of hypothesis testing, understanding the normal distribution, for at least for the entry level. So it's very because in finance, all we're trying to do is trying to predict the probability of a future event and getting the expected value from those future events. So if you roll a die, if there's a question on how if you actually roll a die, what is the expected value? So that is essentially the average value that you get when you when you roll a die, which is like 3.5. So you need to have a very good understanding of, very decent understanding, I would say a basic understanding of probability and statistics. Second is data analysis. You would be joining at an analyst level. So there's some skills that you need to have, you can bring to the table. So for data analysis, something you can show. So the statistical part that I spoke about initially can be used for data analysis. And this I can pair up with the next skill, which is coding. So you're expected to know some level of coding, some because you would a majority of your work would be doing a lot of automating a lot of reports, running a lot of data analysis checks, a lot of statistical checks, even which require knowledge of stats. It requires you to handle a lot of data. By a lot of data, I mean hundreds of thousands of rows in in a project, as well as some understand, and as well as you need to have the skill set to implement those statistical models. So you need a lot of coding skills. In addition to that, if possible, if possible, and if you have time from your undergrad, you can do a bit of data visualization. So this means you can try there's a library called D3JS, which essentially is visualizing data uh, in JavaScript. So it's not very hard to learn. I would strongly suggest you learn, and that will go a long way in showcasing you as someone who does know how to do things. So summarizing the four skills that are needed to actually get into banks in risk management or quantitative finance in general is you need to have a strong understanding of probability and statistics, data analysis, coding, and data visualization. In terms of coding, I would say if you learn Python, if you can learn Python, there's nothing better than that, and you can learn VBA. That would be pretty useful. I hope I have covered this topic pretty extensively. How should I prepare for interviews? So in terms of preparing for your interviews, I can suggest that you have your basics of maths, statistics, and data analysis in place. So this means you actually talk to you have a very decent understanding of hypothesis testing. You have a very decent understanding of uh, coding. So this means you can, if someone gives you some weird data set, you know how to organize that data set and how to do some work with it. So and these, it definitely helps if you can explain that, if you can explain your thought process to your interviewer. Definitely, an interest in finance would help. That would actually be my next questions. Do I need to take any kind of any certification to actually those get into a finance job? But in if you how to if you have to prepare for an interview, all I can say is if you do some kind or if you have some basic skill sets which they are looking at, and if you can showcase and demonstrate that you really have those skill sets, like doing some projects at school which involve a lot of processing of data, showing some Python code. Uh, I know Python, that's why I'm talking about that. But there are other tools as well that you can show. Have some decent, I have some understanding of statistics because that's what they're actually looking at. I think you are very well covered in that front, and you can easily get into these roles and jobs. Uh, so there's one question I was actually asked the last time I had my webinar, and the question was, do to pursue a career in finance, is it really mandatory to do the CFA and FRM certifications? And the answer is no. A lot of people in finance do not have these certifications. However, uh, if you have been working in the industry for like 1 or 2 years or 3 years and you're trying to move your way into finance, having this certification helps because for one thing you get some basic understanding the of the area that you're trying to get in, the theoretical part, and two, it really helps you in setting apart from other candidates in showing that you really have the interest and you really have the dedication, the perseverance to actually learn something while you were doing, while you were either in your school or you were in your undergrad or while you were working. So it helps a lot. Helps in, at least for early career changes. Earlier or entry level applicants, it really sets them apart, saying that okay, this person is really interested if he has done at least one level of these certifications. But it's not mandatory at all. You can still, if you have those skill sets and you project that you really have some interest in finance, you have taken some courses in your undergrad school in finance, I think you're very well covered. So, what are the exit options? So, I shouldn't be talking about exit options, but I would say, nevertheless, why not? Yeah, so you should, if you're trying to get into risk management, you do have some basic skill sets in data analysis and analytics and statistics. So obviously, one of the exit options is to actually get into statistics. So this means you can get into analytics pretty easily if you just prepare a bit towards that side. So this means, right, instead of doing analytics for finance, you can do for, let's say, a logistics company or probably e-shopping company like Walmart or Flipkart. And that transition isn't really hard. And since if you are working for a big brand bank, uh, it becomes all the more easier for you to actually make the transition because the banks are, the companies in which you're trying to get into, if it is an analytics company, they already know that these banks have a very extensive hiring process. If someone is working over there, it's good enough to actually get work in their area as well. Other than that, you can have a you can try to get into some other areas in finance which are not necessarily risk management. So if you actually look at the openings of all these banks, you can see that they're looking for a lot of jobs of trading jobs on the side of trading. So you have trading analysts, you have uh, research analysts, and these jobs require almost the same skill set in terms of the hard skills. So the same programming skills, the same, I would say, SQL skills, same data analysis skills, the same understanding of data is pretty much similar. So you can actually get into a bit quantitatively focused research positions in these banks. So you would be essentially doing some kind of research for one of the tests. So let's say you're doing, someone is asking you to do some sector research, so you're essentially trying to see how your equity market in one particular sector uh, is moving in general. They would require the same understanding or same skills in terms of handling data. So you can use that. That's one of the exit options. Uh, there was one question. I'm not sure you. For some of you, it'll be useful. For some of you, it might not be useful. So there's someone who was interested in pursuing a career in quantitative finance, and he was asking what test should I take. So should you take the GRE or GMAT score or GMAT? So I would say you can actually take. Uh, it's better to take GRE because not every program is supporting GMAT. And and there was one question that was asked like what was the minimum GMAT score. So honestly, I don't know how much it is. But I would strongly suggest if it is GMAT, you scored something about 700. That really helps because uh, a score of that, if you have a high score, this probably means they have an aptitude for numbers, really which really helps you in getting into these programs if you're looking for this quantitative finance programs. Uh, like, I think I should have answered this first. There's one question that was asked, should I go for a master's program? That okay, so that depends on your interests. There are multiple master's programs in that you can actually do. I, for personally, was more interested on the quantitative focus program, so I joined quantitative finance programs. But there are a lot of MS in finance programs which focus more on the finance side of things, and not that much into the computation and the coding and the math part of things. It's more on the finance and less on the math. So it's totally up to you on whether you want to do the master's program and what kind of master's program you're looking at. If you're an engineer, I would strongly suggest you try the master's in the the quantitative finance program. So any school which has financial engineering, mathematical finance. I went to Georgia Tech. So Georgia Tech's program, its name is Quantitative and Computational Finance Program. Some schools have named it as Mathematical Finance. So all the programs which have some kind of a math name in it and finance are quantitative finance programs. So for these quant finance programs, it's they are tailor made for engineers. So it's easy to make the transition. Uh, there's one question that was asked last time, which I feel is very relevant, and the question was having prior work benefits in masters, or can a fresher also perform well in the masters if he does not have prior industry? And the answer is yes and yes. Like it's totally on your skill on what exactly you can do in your master's program if you get into those. However, in terms of job search, having some experience definitely helps, especially if it is relevant. I actually would be joining a quantitative equity fund in Los Angeles, and my experience in risk management at HSBC, where I was working before I joined my program, really helped me because at least all I could do was project the skill sets that I had. And I had some skill sets that can be used across to the asset management industry and not just in banks in risk management. So if you have some relevant experience, definitely it definitely helps you in securing the better jobs. Otherwise, it becomes a bit more challenging, and you would have to settle for anything that comes your way. But you can, in terms of your ability to perform well in the masters, there's no one denying that you can easily do that. There's one question that was pertaining to my program, which was the QCF, the Quantitative and Computational Finance program, and it was, does your master's in computational finance require extensive coding? And the answer is yes. This program name is competitive and quantitative, computational and quantitative and computational finance. So there's computation name in the program. So yes, this program is extensively coding focused. There is a lot of there are a lot of models that have been built in finance over the last 50 or 60 years, especially during the last 10 years. In my program, I was expected to implement those models through code and not just through math and understand them. It required a lot of coding, a lot of understanding of data, using the data to build a lot of projects. But it was a very good experience, I would say. So if you're thinking of getting into these programs, start liking coding. It would save you. It would save you in this program. It would be very useful. In terms of code, I can also say that you need, in terms of the skills, in addition to basic programming skills, if you know SQL, it would help you securing a job over here. So if you know coding, SQL, math, and have understanding of data, rest assured you will get a job. It's just a matter of time. So the prereqs for getting in this program, for securing a job in this country, are these. Uh, there was one question, difference between computational finance program and other finance master's programs. So I think I covered that. So usually you have, if there's MBA, for that probably you need to have some kind of an experience. They go into different set of roles. So they get into either investment banking or private equity, those kind of roles. And for those roles, understanding of a lot of current market practices, processes is very important. So it's very hands-on and tailor-made for MBAs because they have a lot of training in that area. If you do a master's in finance program, master's in accounting, usually you get into accounting and corporate planning, corporate budgeting kind of roles in these financial institutions. It's a very different, if you're doing financial engineering or quant finance, it's a different set of roles. So you're either getting into model development and risk management, you're getting into trading model development, you're trying to get into asset management industry. Asset management is essentially these banks usually sell their stocks when they raise stocks or bonds or anything, they sell it to asset managers. So asset managers require a lot of understanding of these complicated financial products. When hence they require a lot of people who have understanding of quantitative finance programs. So from financial engineering, you can get into banks in quant, in a lot of quant programs. So they have risk management programs, they have desk strategist programs. I would suggest you actually have a look at that. You can get into asset management. You can get into a lot of rating companies like S&P, Moody's, Fitch, and you can get into credit rating agencies like FICO, Experian, I would say. Then there's one more rating agency which I'm just kind of forgetting. Just give me- You have TransUnion, so Equifax. So these are the companies that we'll be targeting. If you want to get into consulting, do an MBA, consulting for financial services. Uh, that's actually better. But even in consulting, they have some roles for quant finance people because banking is becoming more and more quant finance focused. So It's you would have so McKinsey, Bain, and BCG all have their arms for for financial services, and especially for those branches, for those roles, they require people with the same set of skills that I had mentioned before. So it's uh, in all, if I were have to summarize, there are a lot of each masters have are tailor-made for a specific set of roles. They don't really train you to be a generalist. It's definitely not possible because you don't have time. Uh, and At least from a financial engineering perspective, no matter what role you do, the basic skill set remains the same on the things that they're looking at when they're hiring. That's actually a good thing because you have more options when you're applying. Uh, and The markets are pretty competitive, so in terms of your skill set, they require you to have a very deep understanding of whatever you claim to know. I'm actually done with my set of questions, so I was wondering if you have any other questions, I can actually talk about those. I'm just checking the Q&A section. Just give me a moment, please. Okay, it's taking longer than usual. Sorry, I just need to check that again. Give me a moment, please. Okay, nevertheless, if you have any questions, you can actually put that in the group chat and I will answer those now. So now I think I can talk about the risk management program, that what exactly was done. So I'm a career shifter. So I was working as a technology analyst in a bank, in Standard Chartered Bank, and then when I moved to HSBC, I thought the skill set that helped me get there would be very useful for undergrad student who's trying to make his way in finance. So when I designed the program, when I put down those videos, created those small basic assignments, the understanding was that a bill, if someone knows what a bond is, if someone knows what exactly an option is, it would really help in putting them across other candidates who don't really know that and they're still trying to get into finance. So the idea is not is for you. That program is by no means an extensive program to actually to risk management. It's just a primer to actually get you started. That was the expectation. So when if you're trying to get into a bank, you can say that, hey, even though I would say I'm not a master's student or I don't really having experience in finance, I know ABC. I know what bonds are. I know what value at risk is as a concept. I do know how what a bond yield is. That really helps in putting you in front of the other applicants who don't really know all that. It and increases your probability of getting hired by these banks. And that's the objective. If you actually get into these banks, obviously this knowledge is pretty much useless because in that because once you get in, you do a lot of projects, you do a lot of uh, day-to-day work. For instance, I work as a risk analyst at HSBC, and my job over there was extensively. So I was part of a team whose job was to provide scenarios. I would say this means returns of a lot of different risk factors that we used to call that to the bank's risk engine, which essentially would eventually would go to the regulators in UK and US uh, for detailing what exactly the bank had and what was at risk. So my job essentially was handling a lot of market data from a lot of sources. Banks usually use a lot of Bloomberg, which is a market data provider. You can actually Google that. You will understand what exactly they do. And my job over there was actually working with this market data, trying to see anomalies in the data. So it required a lot of statistical analysis. There was a lot of reporting that was required. So there was a lot of automation that I had to do. At that time, I used to do that in VBA pretty extensively. And there was some SQL and Python level coding that I had to do. In addition to that, I had to work on some projects because there are always improvements in the back. Some projects which keep on happening or which are in progress in a bank, which keep on either improving some previous processes or previous infrastructure, or there's new requirement which has come up. So uh, my job over there was to actually work on this work, do some daily analysis on that data, try to understand the queries and commentaries of a lot of risk managers, and explain and cater to their requirements. In addition to that, I had to work on a lot of projects which would require me uh, there's no way I can actually explain how you would work in a project because if you haven't really worked, you won't really know. But that would involve reading a lot of methodology documents because WAR was a methodology that was developed by a bank called JP Morgan. Similarly, there are some enhancements which keep on happening in banks, and people work on those. Uh, so this was my role as a risk analyst over there. There are other roles as well. My role was mostly on implementing models, not exactly developing models. It's very unlikely that you can get into a model development role with just a bachelor's without any experience. But if you do get, it's actually a very good role. So, especially when I'm talking about market risk models, credit risk models, I think you can get into roles in which you actually develop models uh, just with your bachelor's degree without any experience. So you have model development, you have the kind of market data kind of role that I was doing. Then there are roles in which you essentially report. So you have a lot of all the numbers, there are value at risk numbers, a lot come from different desks. Banks have usually different desks, so this means you have one desk which deals only on one sector of, let's say it's equity. They deal with one sector of one country for equity. So the they trade with equity of only that sector of that country. So you have some roles in which you have to essentially aggregate all your data points and then work and then report that to the higher management. So you have roles in which you have to do a lot of reporting. So it's a very there are so many different roles which are there, and initially I would say it's more of a luck case for you to actually get into any of those, and all are probably equally good. Depending on the aptitude, you can always change and progress with your career. So I am actually done with the regular part of this conversation. I'm just trying to see if there are any other questions. If you do have questions, please put those in the group chat. I'm just writing something. I'll just wait out for like 2 or 3 minutes in case. Hello. Hi, Aaron.
Hey, Abhirup. Yep.
I don't think we have any other questions. I checked the Q&A. I don't see anything.
Okay. Um, Let me also look at it one more time, and then um, you're done. We can close the show. Um, you're done. We can